So we have said recording. Can we start by discussing the case study?
Yes, doctor.
Okay. Have you all had time to read through it?
Actually, me, I tried to read, but somehow I got a bit engaged. So I read like halfway. I didn't complete it.
Okay.
Doctor, personally, I haven't tried to read. I've been in the bar. I lost my mom, so
Oh,
I was a bit
sorry.
Yes.
Sorry about that.
Yes.
Okay. For those who have read through, maybe for someone can give us an overview. Anyone who has read what the case study is about. Has anyone read through? Anyone with any opinion about it?
Actually, me, the part I read, as I was trying to look at the objectives of that company, it was the non-government and for-profit. So they are looking about the delinquents, trying to rehabilitate. So later they realized if they adopted the ICT, like it was going to improve on the work. Like the time they are doing their work, like it was going to improve if they adopted the ICT. So from there, I think it is where I stopped. Like I didn't have much time because they are looking at how to improve like the ICT infrastructure they had before. Then we are looking at how they are going to improve it. Then later they realized like some of the, like they are not using all the system entirely, like the users weren't adopting it. So to me looks like when they are implemented the new system, like they didn't train the users much on how to use it.
Okay. And what was the uniqueness about this Clarion School for Boys? It's a school for delinquent, like as the word, the term. Let me see if I can pull it out.
I think the uniqueness, if I recall, was among the group of schools. I think this one was the second biggest. I think this one has.
There's a Clarion School for Boys which has different divisions, but in terms of other schools, it's other competitors. What was unique about it?
Yeah, maybe adaptation of ICT.
I think one, before even they talk, before they I think it's one of their strategic goals, but one was that the school itself had been founded by, let me see if I can see it. It was founded in 1989 as a refuge for wayward boys. in quotes, by a group of investors from Chicago, all of whom had grown up in foster homes, but accumulated considerable wealth during their lives. Their vision was to create an environment for boys who had got into trouble that would provide them with diagnosis and treatment, as well as discipline and support needed to become productive members of society. But also the unique thing about it was that it was usually the last resort. Where others would fail, they would take on. That was one of the things that it took on, the last resort. That means the worst kind of boys that could be thought of. And yes, one of their strategic goals was to use ICT. That was one of their strategic goals, I think.
Yeah, that's true.
Did anyone else have an opinion on it? Did anyone else read? Yes, Lillian.
Another unique thing I read about Clarion School. It wanted to differentiate itself from its competitors. And it did this by emphasizing the importance of using modern information technology.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Lillian. So I think we already see it. That was a strategic goal. The fact that it wanted to use ICT. Yeah. Did you see any other thing unique, any other thing that stood out for you? For example, in this case study, we see someone called Young, who has been tasked with, specifically it was his interest in strategy overall, and he had had an MBA, and he had been tasked to inform the board on whether the investment they had made in 1998 for a new system, if it was paying off. So we see somebody being tasked, and this is the controller. What is unique about, what stands out for you? For me, what stands out, you can take your time and read through. For me, what stands out is that you have there's no mention of the ICT department or head ICT or anyone like that. It is the controller, an MBA graduate, who is being asked. And it looks like even the previous, his predecessor was also in the same category. We have non-ICT people making ICT decisions, taking leads in ICT decision making. So what we're going to do, let's go through strategy, ICT strategy planning, and see the role of the CIO. And then we shall come back to your assignment for this particular case study. Is that agreeable?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So let me share my screen. Can you all see my screen?
Yes, doctor.
Okay.
Yes, doctor.
So we want to focus now specifically on ICT strategic planning. Last week, Friday and Saturday, we looked at generic strategic planning and how a generic strategic plan for an organization is formulated with its specific business goals formulated. Now, one of the interesting things I want to point out is that usually a strategic plan of any organization should be public knowledge, usually. And I went ahead, I wanted to give you samples, which I'm going to post on Moodle after this tomorrow. I'm going to post for you sample ICT strategic documents. And I went ahead and just went online and just Googled. I Googled for universities. That's one, because those are usually the most open. And then I went and Googled also for a hospital. And after I tried Googling for banks, an ICT strategic plan, but there was nothing whatsoever. There was a strategic plan, a generic strategic plan for a Thai bank, the bank in Thailand, but that was it. And these are supposed to be public documents, essentially. But I only found for one hospital and also for a number of universities. So I'll share with you sample ICT strategic plans, so you can see what they generally look like. But for now, let us try to understand what we are looking for in this course unit. So we want to now differentiate what an ICT strategic plan is. We want to, I hope at the end of this, we can know what an ICT strategic plan, because this is something that essentially you should be able to formulate. But we want to understand that this ICT strategic plan is developed on the basis of the organizational strategic plan. Its first foundation should be the business organizational strategic plans, the business strategic goals or objectives. That should be its foundation, its starting base. Yeah. So you cannot have an ICT strategic plan when you don't have an organizational strategic plan. We should first have an organizational strategic plan. We want to look at the benefits. Why is it important to have an ICT strategic plan? Once we go through this, if you go back and look at the Clarion School for Boys, why at the end of the case study we see a mess. One, there wasn't an ICT head, there was no ICT department, and there was no one to drive the organization on selection, implementation, design, selection, and implementation of an information system. The role of the CIO, or sometimes the head director ICT, whatever title you'd like to give this person, that the role of that person. Why that role is extremely important. We're going to look at the classic approach to ICT strategic development, key elements, and so on and so forth. Now, the objective, of course, is to be able to give you guidelines for you. How can you develop an ICT strategy for an organization? And that is and one of the ways we're going to start doing that is by giving you your first 2 assignments. So what is an ICT strategy? What is an ICT strategy? We have already seen what an organizational strategic plan is. So we already know what strategy is. First of all, it is something actionable, something we can work on. It's not something abstract, it's something actionable. Yeah. We want to ensure that the ICT, the IT an organization possesses is able to deliver value towards, the key point, towards the strategic business objectives in a cost-effective manner. We want to ensure that the ICT, an organization possesses or is capable of possessing should be able to deliver value towards the organization's strategic business objectives. Earlier I had said it's not possible to have an ICT strategic plan without an organizational strategic plan. Why? The organization's strategic objectives inform the formulation of the ICT strategic plan. Inform. Now, the key point is that this must be done in a cost-effective manner. Because it is strategy, we may sometimes be lured into thinking we can create an extremely ambitious but unachievable strategic objectives, ICT strategic objectives. We don't want at the end of the day to say, oh, we want everything to be digital. I remember at Umu always saying, we want a paperless university, paperless university. But sometimes before you print for someone something, they'll say, I sent it on email. Oh, can you print it for me? Yet we're saying we want a paperless university. So these are things that, so we need to, it needs to be something that is cost effective, something that is accessible to all and is understandable to all. So the ICT strategy is also a set of decisions made by IT or ICT together with senior management, As we talk about these things, go back and think about the Clarion case study situation. Go back and think about it. It highlights the relationship between the technology choices and the business choices. The technology choices and the business choices. So there must be a clear relationship between the two. So it is a living document, living meaning it has a start time and an end time, and it has to be evaluated. Yeah. So why do we carry out ICT strategic plan? Why? The most important thing is that we have to align the technology to the business goals. That is the first and most important benefit. Aligning the technology, the organization's technology to the business goals, so that we allow a contribution, an actual direct contribution to achieving the organization's strategic objectives. Secondly, it allows that ICT is fully integrated across each department, If you go back to the Clarion case study, and you look at the evaluation feedback, the feedback that the users gave, you will see a lot of what we're saying here lacking. Yeah? You see a lot of what we're saying lacking. So now, because we have that integration, we then have an organization-wide management of your ICT environment. We get to see the needs of all our customers, and they are fully considered. Again, think back to as we're talking about this, please relate it to the case study. The strategic plan also helps to build a strong relationship between the business and the ICT department. The business and the ICT department, normally you hear people say, oh, those ICT people, but to build that strong relationship. Then the other key point is that it brings to light the need for a CIO, the Chief Information Officer, or sometimes this word can change, the head ICT, the director ICT, whatever it is, but that person who heads the chief, who heads the IT department. So who is the Chief Information Officer? This is a strategic level position. Yeah, this is a strategic level position. Now, as ICT people, we are normally involved with solving problems. Immediately we think of an ICT problem, we want to come up with an ICT solution. But the CIO arises above that and leaves the position of firefighting, but comes now to elevate ICT to solve a problem even before it is identified. Yeah, because now you elevate ICT to the level that it's now resolving business problems. It's now, achieving business objectives. What are we normally seen as? The printer is down, call ICT. My computer is not quite working, get ICT here. I need an upgrade of software, ICT, come and do that. But we want to move beyond, we want to elevate ICT above that. Yeah. So what does the ICT, the CIO do? They write the strategic plan, but together with the entire ICT department, together with management. The CIO is the one who coordinates, the one who creates a relationship between users, management, and the IT department. I'm sure if I ask any of you how others perceive you in your workplace, most of you will say most of the time they don't understand us. Most of the time they don't understand us. I remember one time I was hearing users give their perceptions of ICT, that these are people, you have a problem with your laptop, the person comes, you tell him this, he sorts it, then he just walks away. He hasn't told you what the issue was, hasn't told you. So there's a mystery around ICT department members. But now the CTO or the CIO comes in to bridge that gap. Why? Because the ICT is now beginning to speak the language of the business. That's essentially what this course is supposed to do, to get ICT to now begin to speak the language of the entire organization. Yeah, that is, we're moving away from the black screens, the coding and so on and so forth. We're moving out of that and coming to the strategic level. What else does the CIO do? They oversee the implementation of the strategic plans through policies. That is why this particular module is called ICT Strategy and Policy Planning. Yeah. This is the fourth one, the one of the second last, managing unrealistic expectations. Usually they are very unrealistic expectations from ICT. Okay. That's what, in a nutshell, that is the CIO. Do we have any questions so far? Or any comments so far?
I think we are okay. We are following.
Okay, okay. So let us look at the classic approach to ICT development. Now, unlike, we're still almost similar, but still remember, like we've said, the ICT strategy development starts with the organization's strategy. Yeah. So we start by identifying the business capabilities or the business's organizational goals. What are the strategic goals or objectives of your organization? What are they? What does the organization intend to do? What is its unique nature? What is its unique contribution to its industry? what does the strategic plan of your overall organization say about your organization? What is its capabilities? For example, when I asked you about Clarion, the Clarion School for Boys, what was its uniqueness? What was unique about it? One of the things for me was to see that it was started by a group of businessmen, a group of business personalities who all grew up in foster homes. So they knew what it means to be severely, should I say, wanting in youth, that needs that a disturbed youth, a youth who is lacking in care. They know what it means. So that I think that was one of their unique capabilities, their understanding of young boys who are in a bad situation. They had an understanding. I think that is one. The fact that they take on the worst cases, the last resort, that is another huge, it speaks to the vision of the school. So you identify those unique capabilities, and all those things start with the organization's strategic plan. So that document becomes the basis. You then assess the gap between the organization's current maturity against its capabilities. What we discussed earlier, but now we're looking at it in terms of technology. Where are the gaps from where they are now and where they want to go? And then you identify how technology can be used to address any gap. All the gaps you have identified, how can technology come in? And usually the strategic plan should have identified those gaps. The organization's strategic plan should have identified those gaps. How can technology then be used to address any of those gaps? There are places where technology cannot address, there are places where technology can. Now, after you assess where technology can come in, design the target technology architecture that will support the required business capabilities. In other words, when you design that technology, you are essentially saying, this is the goal. This is our vision for technology. Doesn't mean it's the technology you have now, but this is the vision for the technology that you need to achieve the organization's strategic goals. Now, once you have designed it, you then assess the gap for the current, what you currently have, what is your current technology architecture and your target technology architecture. So once you assess that gap, that gap then becomes your technology. That's where you begin to identify your ICT strategic goals. The things you need to do to transform your current ICT technology, your current technology architecture, to get it to your target technology architecture. That this becomes your prioritized roadmap. Okay, let's review what we are saying. We start with your organization's strategic document, which assesses which basically tells us the unique nature of your business, your organization, like the way the Clarion School was described. Its uniqueness and its vision. That's one. So there you're getting an intimate knowledge as ICT, an intimate knowledge into what your organization is, its core business and its uniqueness. Then you look at the gap, which would have been identified by the team that was developing the strategic plan. The gap between the current state and where it needs to go. Then you identify the technology that needs to address those gaps, the gap between where the organization is now and where it wants to go. What technology can be used to address those gaps? What technology? Then once you identify that technology, design the target technology architecture that will support the organization get to where it wants to go. Then look at your current technology architecture, where those gaps that you identify, those become your ICT strategic objectives. Have we understood each other so far?
Yes, doctor.
Okay. Now, for your assignment, use this approach. Look at the Clarion School for Boys and use that approach, because it will require you to develop a strategic plan, an ICT strategic plan. We are going to assume you have the organizational strategic plan, but from their discussion, I think they're already showing you where they are now and where they want to go. What needs to be described in an IT or ICT strategic plan? There are 5 pillars on which any ICT strategic plan sits. And these are the pillars: the application strategy, the integration strategy, infrastructure strategy, service sourcing strategy. We're going to go through each one at a time. So the application strategy basically guides on how you're going to deal with IT applications. What IT applications does the organization need to support its business strategies? What IT applications does it need? And what are the cost implications? Integration strategy. What applications need to communicate with which application to be able to support the business processes? For example, you go to the Clarion School, you have the finance side, you have, there are the different departments that have been pointed out there. There are those who, there are those who deal with treatment, there are those who deal with transition, whatever it is, and then there is finance. All those different departments, what department needs to feed into what? So if it's a question of information needs to be transitioned from one department to the next, so which application needs to communicate with which application? Where do we need integration? Infrastructure. Now, if you've looked at the applications, you need to know then what infrastructure needs to support. What infrastructure needs to support this information? I remember for the Clarion School for Boys, one particular person said that how they were using a card system to enter for their particular patients or their clients. But then he said, but I've heard also that this system also has the same structure. But the person said that they didn't have time to line up where the computers were to go and enter that information. That person found it easier to fill out the manual card. So that meant there was no infrastructure strategy. The current infrastructure did not support service strategy. So this one determines how the organization's customers will get services and at which level. Again, think of the Clarion School. Sourcing. So sourcing here determines where you'll do things in-house or you will access a third party. Now, we are going to discuss certain factors that influence strategy. One of the things that's extremely important to consider when you're thinking of doing things in-house or bringing in a third party is the data. What information is going to be stored there? And what are the rules and regulations concerning that, especially when you get a third party to come in to hold your information, which may be sensitive. We shall discuss later on some of those things that affect strategy formulation. So this is a generic strategic plan process, what one would go through. And it follows through the classic approach, and the elements that we saw in the classic approach, we also see them here. In identifying our objectives, our strategic objectives, we start with understanding our business, the business in which we exist as an ICT department, and then we align our IT strategy to the business strategy. Yeah. We said we start with our first input with the business strategic plan. We already went through the classic approach. Now, what we do is once we have identified the gaps, we identify the evolution of scenarios that impact the IT strategy. We look at those scenarios where ICT will play a role. And if it plays a role there, how does it play that role? In what way? In what way can ICT play that role? In that way, we're designing our ICT or IT architecture, the future ICT architecture. So this is the first two stages where we identify our objectives. Two, we identify our implementation method. So this is the time we actually develop. Number one, we design our architecture. So in designing our architecture, when we have identified the gaps, we then identify how we're going to implement. Yeah. So in the architecture, we've determined what infrastructure we shall have, what applications, the processes, and so on and so forth. So here we're identifying our implementation methods. So all of this is still on paper. So then in this process, we define our IT strategic initiatives. What are those strategic objectives that we are going to fulfill to get to that future that we want? So here we identify the costs and benefits. What resources are we going to need and the time? We also establish periodic reviews to see if we're actually heading to that particular setting we want to get to. We define our application and service level, the short-term staffing needs, and the yearly budget. Any questions so far? I'm going to assume silence means consent. Okay, then let's go to strategy implementation. So after we have formulated our strategy, the next step is implementation. Yeah. The most important thing is implementation, because this is how we then actually in concrete actions, in concrete action, we support the organization to achieve its strategic goal. We actually bring out the value of ICT. Yeah, we actually bring out the value of ICT. Sometimes strategic implementation may pose a threat. So this is why it is important to have change management. You must have an implementing team. And this implementing team must have key stakeholders, people who are to gain, who are actually going to gain from it. So we start with developing an organization team. So this organization team is made up of more than just the IT department, but key stakeholders. That is one. Two, disbursement of resources. Yeah, abundant resources. So this is where the development of the strategic plan comes together with management, because management is the one that will disperse or dispense or give you or authorize you to use resources, company resources. 2, 3, create encouraging policies. So the ICT policy is one of them. 2, the different departments where the ICT department, the ICT strategy is going to be implemented, you must also see change in policy or new policies coming in to support the strategic plan, the ICT strategic plan. We must see policies in these different departments coming in. I don't remember if I'd mentioned it, I think in this class. I have a student who is doing research on enforcement of national ICT policy. And he's using a framework that was developed in Kenya. And one of the things, one of the pillars or the domains that the framework proposes is that to enforce that we must be seeing policies, new policies or policy changes in all the affected departments. We shouldn't just see the national ICT policy affecting an agency, for example, like NIRA or NITA-U, but we should also be seeing that within the different departments in the agencies, we must be seeing policy change. So also we must be seeing within the organization, let's say the finance department, we must see some policy change coming in because of the new strategic policy implementations. Yeah. And this then goes in hand with employing of best policies and programs. It comes hand in hand with this point. To support the implementation, create a reward structure so that you reward those, or you actually, maybe this reward structure could be talking about seeing, all these people we've seen, this particular department has seen improvements in these processes and these processes, and in particular, this particular individual has been noted. Make use of the strategic leadership. Yeah, those people who are leading strategy within the organizations, but in particular management. Let's look at factors that influence ICT. On this page, this particular side, we have a summary. We're going to discuss them in detail. First with the internal, then the external. So let's look at the factors that will influence ICT strategy. First, we talked about where the business goes. The business goals should be the first leading factor that influence our strategy formulation. We should be seeing, let's say, here's an example. If you have a strategy that says a business strategy that says that they want to reduce the volume of data input by employees. Well, then the ICT strategy may say that we want to see increased business processes going online. Yeah, increased business processes going online. That is one of them. That is one way the ICT strategy can come in to support that business goal. So we should be saying each of your ICT strategies should be there to support a particular or more than one business goal. So that is one. Two, finance. Every business is looking to survive, and specifically to survive and thrive, it must be seen to make a profit. So everything ICT should do should have a cost benefit analysis. A cost benefit analysis must be used. Will a new system improve efficiency? Will a new system reduce time spent transferring data between systems? In all of it, you must consider ways of reducing costs. Okay? The size, type, and structure of the organization. So this is where the ICT really must have an intimate knowledge of the organization. Is it prudent for you to outsource parts of your system? Do you have enough capability to do something in-house? Look at the flow of information, both formal and informal. Look at the hierarchy of the hierarchical structure of the methods or procedures. So you must have an intimate knowledge of your organization, the structure, the capability, the internal capabilities, what you should or should not do, what is your most sensitive data, is it prudent to keep it with, to outsource it, and so on and so forth. Legacy systems, what currently exists? What is your old system? How is data transferred? If we have a new system, can we easily transfer this data from the old to the new? Is the new hardware compatible with the existing? Do we want to completely do away with the existing? And so on and so forth. So this is looking at what you have currently. And if you have ideas of bringing in a new system, how easily is it going to be? Is it going to, how compatible is the whole other systems going to be? The information assets. This is where we look at the actual information, the organization, the information assets it possesses. Will we need new staff, both in the ICT department and also in the other departments, to be able to handle? How is the data being collected? The information assets we use, how do we currently collect that data? We need to change. You need to look at the data you keep, how it is kept, for how long should it be kept, and so on and so forth. I remember I looked at, when we were developing a draft ICT policy for UMU, we had to look at things like registry data. And it was that time when I realized that registry actually has policies on what data they keep and for how long. For example, results. Then also there is the exams, that have been written exams. They actually reach a point where they destroy old exams. There's only a specific time when they can keep those written hard papers. So that is also that understanding that kind of data. So far, do we have any question on the internal factors or any comment?
No, Doctor.
Okay, let's move on then to the external. So external, we may start with geographical. We want to look at our geographical location. If you look at the Clarion School for Boys, you realize that there are different branches in different, I think, states. Yeah. So you may want to consider, are we only looking at an ICT strategy for that particular, or what about the others? I think all schools are owned by the same board. So they may want to consider a system, the same system for all. Maybe they also exchange information. I don't know. Where are the clients located? Do you have a LAN or a WAN? You have both. Is it may it be prudent to open up e-commerce? Is it necessary? Then once you're thinking that you go beyond, if your business is going beyond your national boundaries, what are the international legislations? Technology changes. And if you see the Clarion School, you'll see this effect there. What is the problem about getting the latest hardware? You may be getting the most mature, which is good, meaning it doesn't have bugs, but what is its lifespan and for how long will it be supported? Consider the frequency of procurement. You don't want to be seen as raising the cost. Look at your competitors. What technology are your competitors using? Compliance with external organizations. If you're outsourcing parts of your organization, parts of your system, consider the communication devices. Compliance with legislations. This is extremely important when you look at the current legislature, the current acts that may affect the data especially the data protection laws of your country. You can think of this, use this as a thinking point. Consider yourself the CIO of UMO, and part of your role is to ensure that the policies written support the ICT strategy compliance. How would you go about this? Especially considering Uganda's legislation laws. So as CIO, you must be aware of Uganda's current legislations that will affect your ICT strategy. Now, there are situations where you have large organizations. For example, the Clarion School is obviously a large organization. We may be just looking at the Milwaukee State Clarion School, but there are others. So you actually need a corporate ICT strategy that can be applied throughout the entire organization. So if you're having a corporate ICT strategy, you have to think about things like the technology life cycle, future proofing, procurement, people considerations, and information management. Let's look at each at a time. So you can't now begin to say that we're only going to look at, let us say if we're looking at UMU. UMU has several campuses: Fort Poto, Nkozi, Masaka, Rubaga, Ngeta, what's the other one in the east? Mbale. So we have to think about the technology life cycle for each campus. If you're buying computers for Nkozi, it has to be the same, so that time for you consider the life cycle of these technologies and when they need to be changed. Yeah. Future proofing. This is when you make sure the system has a reasonable life and does not need to be replaced anytime soon. So this is where the life cycle of any hardware comes in. Consider the network traffic. Do we have data transfer between campuses or between different locations? Consider the capabilities of wireless, consider wireless capabilities. So if you're mobile, you may be flexible in the number of workstations. Procurement, because procurement now affects across the board. It affects across the board. People considerations. The capabilities you have on one location should be the same capabilities on another location. Let me give you an example. This is outside, of course, this is outside ICT. I've given you an example of Umu, which has different campuses. Now you have a situation where IT is taught at Nkozi, at Masaka, at Mbale. Now, obviously, maybe Nkozi and Masaka may share, but you can't share at Mbale. Now, how sure are you about the capabilities that the same content and in the same capabilities, teaching capabilities taught across the board? Yeah. So you must also consider the ICT staff as you're developing your corporate ICT strategy. The CIO, the Chief Information Security Officer, will ensure that the rules apply consistently across the board. Standards. Now, you'll notice that as you develop an ICT policy, you also develop standards, because standards have to be the same across the board. Standards have to be the same across the board. If it's this type of cable, network cable that is going to be bought for this particular location, it's the same with the other. The same standards must be followed. You can also Google and look at some documents which spell out standards. Just look through those. Look for this article. Look for that article that discusses factors that influence information system implementation in government institutions. It will give you some insight on what we've been discussing. So that marks the end. Do we have any question?
Yeah, thanks, Doctor.
Yes, please.
I have one question while implementing the ICT strategy.
Yes.
So you have some organizations, like when they're part of the cost benefit analysis, you know, initially when you are setting up the ICT, you find it is expensive if you have to set up the network, buying equipment and internet. So you find that the cost is high, and at times they may want you to compromise and maybe get things of less quality. And that, let's say for internet, they may ask you the MBs you are requesting, it's costing a lot of money, then they tell you maybe if we can do less. Then at the end, when the staff, like they find they can't access internet at the faster rate, you find they tend to blame the ICT.
Yes.
Like this you are giving us is very slow, we are paying a lot of money. So in that case, like the ICT manager, what can you do?
Robert, that is where the role of the CIO comes in, to manage expectations. We must be able to manage expectations. Yeah, where you inform. Remember, as you develop your strategy, you're doing it together with management and other key stakeholders. and you let them know, if we need to achieve this, this is the ICT strategic goal we need. This is the infrastructure we need. Of course, it is a goal, it's built over time. And throughout, you inform management. These are, let's say, if we're to build our infrastructure up to here, these are the speeds we are going to expect, and this is what we can do with those speeds. So at every step of the way, you have engagement as you push your strategic objectives throughout. As you push them, you let management know what is expected of what will be achieved at the end of the day. So that is what it means to manage those expectations. Twin, I hope I've answered your question.
Yes, you have.
Okay. Do we have any other question? No? Okay, if we don't, then I'm just going to, I want to move to what we have. Since I'm not supposed to save changes, I want to show you the assignments on Moodle. So you'll notice that these two sections have been opened up, ICT strategy planning. So you have the lecture slides there, you have the reading material as well. And then you have these two. The first one, strategy formulation, it is intended for 10th November. This is where you will submit your document, your strategic document that you'll have developed as a group. Yeah, that's the first one. The second one is where you will submit your presentations, which will be done on the 5th. That is next Saturday. So next Saturday, we expect to have presentations of your strategic plans, but come 10th, you'll submit the full document as group. So those will be taken as 2 assignments. So the presentation will be fully defended. You'll defend your strategic objectives. And that's where it's not just going to be the presentation, but your defense, your ability to defend your strategic plans. Do you have any questions so far?
Doctor, I beg your pardon on the deadlines.
The deadlines. The first deadline is for the presentation. This is 5th November. That is next Saturday, when you'll present and defend your strategic plans and then submit it on Moodle. That is 5th. That will be next Saturday. Then I can rearrange these so that they don't confuse. Let me just rearrange them so they don't confuse you. So the first one is the presentation, and the second one is the document. Okay, so the presentation is 5th November, the document is 10th November. Is that clear?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm giving you tomorrow. Tomorrow you'll be free to start. We won't have the lecture, we'll be free to start. Then on Friday, on Saturday, on Friday, next Friday, we shall look at ICT policy planning. On Saturday, you present your strategic plans for the Clarion School for Boys. Is that okay?
Yeah,
Yes, doctor.
that's okay.
Okay, so unless we have anything else to add, shall I wish you a good Friday evening and a good weekend?
Yes, doctor.
Okay.